Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to jump right into a pretty radical concept from our source text. We're exploring the profound and honestly fascinating connection between your mind and your physical health. Based on insights derived from the spiritual readings of Cayce, we are looking specifically at the principles of healing. And trust me, this isn't just your standard eat an apple a day advice. We are talking about a fundamental paradigm shift in how we view the human body and why it breaks down.
So let's kick things off with a slightly provocative question. What if your thoughts, literally the thoughts bouncing around in your head right now, are actually what's making you sick? In our hyper-managed modern world, we're so quick to blame a virus or genetics or just plain bad luck when we get ill. But the material we're looking at today argues that we might be looking at the entirely wrong end of the equation.
Get this. The text reveals a massive paradigm shift. It claims that a staggering 70% of diseases are actually rooted in mental and emotional states. Yeah, 70%. The physical or material factors, the stuff we usually rush to fix with a bandage or a pill, those only account for about 30% of the root cause. Basically, the vast majority of our physical suffering is actually starting in the invisible, internal landscape of our minds.
Because of that 70-30 splits, we really have to redefine what illness even is. It's not just some mechanical malfunction of the body. It's a fundamental breakdown in our holistic, spiritual balance. When the harmony in our mind collapses, the body literally manifests that collapse physically. It's kind of like a giant alarm system, waving a huge red flag in the form of symptoms, just to tell us that our inner emotional world is in serious distress.
And what's wild is that the source applies this rule even to everyday ailments. It argues that a tired mind creates a vulnerable body. You might think catching a cold is just because you were stuck in an elevator with someone who sneezed, but the text argues that the gateway for that illness was actually opened up by mental fatigue. A loosening of the mind or a drop in your spiritual guard is what actually lets that physical breakdown take hold.
Section 1. Diagnosing the modern world, cancer, and heart disease. Okay, so let's look at the fundamental difference between traditional medicine and this holistic view. Traditional medicine usually looks at a symptom, like a mutated cell or a clogged artery, and tries to mechanically fix it, right? But the holistic spiritual view we're analyzing goes deeper. It looks at that exact same mutated cell and asks, what inner emotional turmoil generated the destructive energy that actually caused this physical mutation in the first place?
Let's take cancer, for example. The source text explicitly defines it as far more than just a random cellular mutation. It describes it as a physical reflection of our highly stressful, modern managed society. It's a very modern illness. The text suggests that the intense, high-pressure environment we live in creates a specific kind of mental cloudiness. It's this dark, heavy thought pattern that then reflects directly into our physical tissues.
So what does that actually look like? Well, cancer is linked to very specific, heavy emotional burdens. The text notes that patients often harbor deep inner conflicts and deeply suppressed feelings. But the real kicker? The most destructive element is the self-punishing thought. Living in a society that constantly makes you feel inadequate creates this chronic state of self-denial. It's that constant internal whisper saying, "I am no good," which then literally materializes as destructive cells.
And when we examine the original Japanese text, we can clearly see the diagnosis of how these self-denying emotions actively generate illness within the body. The source specifically points out that the energy of self-condemnation and feeling inadequate, which, let's be real, are reinforced daily by societal pressures, those are the literal seeds from which aberrant cells grow. It's a stark reminder that our thoughts have actual biological mass.
Now, if cancer is tied to self-punishment, let's pivot to heart disease. The source connects heart disease directly to our endless, totally exhausting competition with the clock. If cancer is the disease of self-punishment, heart disease is the disease of panic. The heart represents the very center of our physical vitality. So when our core philosophy of life is totally disrupted by the frantic pace of modern living, the heart takes the direct hit.
It's chronic anxiety and a deep-seated victim mindset that place this unbearable strain on the heart. Think about that constant rushing, the feeling that you're always falling behind, that severe anxiety of just racing against time. It puts immense pressure on your vitality. And when you add in a victim mentality, feeling constantly persecuted or just needlessly worrying all the time, it creates a psychological burden that the physical heart is forced to carry until it finally breaks down.
So we're seeing a really clear division here. The pathology of the body perfectly mirrors the pathology of the mind. If you're dealing with deep inner conflict and you're constantly punishing yourself, the text suggests this manifests as cancer. On the flip side, if you're living in a state of chronic stress, racing against time, and feeling victimized, well, that specific anxiety targets the heart.
Section 2. The Holistic Cure, Healing Mind and Body. All right, here's where we get to the really empowering part. If our mental states have the power to make us sick, they absolutely hold the incredible power to heal us too. The fundamental cure isn't just about cutting out bad tissue, it's about cutting out the bad thoughts. The source insists that true healing really begins when we consciously release those dark, heavy, self-punishing thoughts and actively redirect our mental energy toward the light. To do this, the text outlines a really comprehensive 4-pillar prescription. It beautifully marries spiritual mindset shifts with tangible physical actions. Because, let's face it, you can't just think positive thoughts while eating terrible food, and you can't eat a perfect diet while hating yourself. It takes all 4 steps: releasing negative emotions, actively cultivating a cheerful outlook, making targeted dietary improvements, and engaging in moderate, consistent exercise.
And speaking of diet, this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Specific nutrients are prescribed here not just for the physical body, but specifically for the mind. Take calcium, for instance. It isn't just for strong bones. The text recommends it because it literally calms an overactive nervous system, helping physically enable mental release. Similarly, plant-based diets high in chlorophyll are prescribed to inhibit disease, while increasing iron and reducing salt helps restore overall harmony. The source explicitly validates how these plant-based foods and specific minerals chemically assist in our spiritual and emotional release. It clearly advises that to open and liberate the mind, you need to consume things that biologically facilitate that process. Taking in calcium pacifies nerve oversensitivity, while the deep green elements of plants actively fight the development of disease cells. It is just a brilliant synthesis of treating the body and the mind together.
So the big takeaway here is that true wellness demands you treat both the physical vessel and the spiritual mind simultaneously. You really cannot treat one and ignore the other. Both the 70% mental and the 30% physical have to be addressed. Healing is an active, holistic harmonization. It's forgiving yourself, letting go of time anxiety, and then supporting that new mental freedom with a calming diet and exercise that gets your energy moving.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a powerful question to think about for your own holistic journey. If 70% of your physical well-being is dictated by your emotional state, that means you have an incredible amount of control over your own health. So, look inward for a second. What heavy, self-punishing, or anxious thought are you carrying around right now? And more importantly, are you ready to finally let it go? Thanks so much for exploring this amazing paradigm shift with me today.